So many parents are worried about hearing the phrase, your child has ADHD, because really it sounds a lot scarier than what it is. Oh no, it's a mental health disorder. Is there a lot of things behind this? Is my child okay? Are they going to be able to be raised normally? Is raising a child with ADHD really that much harder than raising a child who doesn't have ADHD? So, what is ADHD, and is it as scary as it sounds on paper? ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, has three main types. One, you have the inattentive type, which is people who tend to struggle to focus. They will, look at something and get distracted. You will tell them something, they won't remember. There's also the hyperactive subtype, which is, the typical, when I think of ADHD, this is what I tend to think of, which is the little kid who can't sit still, who needs to get up every few minutes, who really just has to be the first one to say something. And then you have the combined type, and that's when you have both the hyperactive and the inattentive type. My son has the combined type, and it's a pretty common one, but he really has trouble with all of the things that I've talked about, which is he always needs to be the first one talking, he likes to be the first one in line, he really has trouble sitting still and focusing on a project. I will tell him something and he will forget it very quickly, or I'll give him a task to do, and sometimes he has trouble focusing and seeing it through, or often actually he has trouble getting started. He also has so much energy. It feels like he's either 100% and all go nonstop, or 0%, he doesn't want to do anything. Good luck getting him to try even to move a foot. It's he's 110% or 0%. That's just who he is. Now my daughter, on the other hand, doesn't tend to struggle with these things the same way my son does. From my perspective as a mom, I see similar traits in my daughter without the extremeness of it. Of course, you acknowledge that there is the behavioral and the neuroscience behind attention or ADHD. It's just acknowledging the difference between my two kids and working with them on sometimes similar and sometimes very different ways. So, for example, getting started with homework. I approach my daughter way differently than I do my son. And some of this has to do with personality, some of this has to do with ADHD, and some of it has to do with age, right? My daughter's 10, my son is 6. That means there's age-appropriate brain development and behaviors behind all of this. And so acknowledging all of that and meeting my kids where they are. And I think that's one of the most important things is, as a parent, is meeting your kids where they are, not where you want them to be or where you think they should be. So because of this, I have different strategies for supporting my son and different strategies for supporting my daughter. For example, with my daughter, we've worked long and hard since she was little on getting her started with homework. She understands the processes behind it. She's maturing now. I'm letting go a lot more and letting her be more in control of her schedule and all of these things that are natural at this age. Now with my son who has ADHD, we're looking a lot more at how do we help get him motivated to get started, and we play a lot of games, and okay, how do we get him to focus on things and what's realistic for where he's at right now. So we use timers, and I make everything, not everything, but as many things as I can. I try to make them fun and engaging for him so that he can get started. And then I'm working right now on slowly pulling my role back as much as I can, as much as is appropriate and he can handle, because I don't ever want it to be, oh mom, I'm his dependence, right? Because I don't want him to be oh, if I'm not there, he can't get things done, because then that's not productive for him later in life. So it's knowing all of these things and working with that. And in my mind, none of this is good or bad, right? It's not bad that my son has more problems remembering, okay, when we get dressed in the morning, we need pants, socks, shirt, shoes, then we need breakfast, then we need our backpack, don't forget your homework. It's not bad that he doesn't remember all that. It's simply that, okay, what systems do we need to have in place to help support him with that? And then same with my daughter. It's not great that, oh, I can tell her something once and she'll, 1, remember, and 2, immediately go do it. not always, just most of the time. That's not good. It just means that, okay, she needs less support in that area than my son does. And it's really, really just recognizing that. For both my kids, they have things they do really well with initially and things they struggle with. Do I think that raising a kid who has ADHD is harder than raising a kid who doesn't have ADHD? I would have to say not really. Really what it comes down to is understanding that they're different and they work differently and meeting them where they are. Like, it's not that, oh, this is harder. It's that, oh, no, I've got to pay attention to both my kids and see where they are and see where they need support and help them build that scaffolding and then slowly back up while they figure things out. It's more about paying attention to my kids in my mind than it is, oh, this kid is so much harder. No, he just has different systems we need to work with and different ways we need to approach it. That's all. So for me, it's not really that much different than it would be if I had a child who didn't have ADHD. I tend to liken it to me not getting angry at my daughter if she doesn't understand a math problem, right? I don't sit there and go, you should know this. It's like, oh, you're having trouble figuring this out. What have you tried? What haven't you tried? Have you thought about it this way? Have you researched it? Like, have you looked on Google for help in a different perspective? And it's really about this whole approach of, let's figure out how to solve this problem together. And you don't know something, that's okay. We can figure things out. And so I really just have this mindset and this approach of like, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna shame my son who has ADHD for struggling to focus or struggling to remember things. It's, okay, how do I work with you? Of course, that being said, we also are seeking support for him externally, right? I'm not sitting here going, I know everything, I can do this all on my own. Like, no, I'm still learning so much about both of my kids daily. And we're constantly reviewing, is this working, is this not working, and checking in on that. So we still go to therapy, and we're still working closely with his doctor and with his psychologist, because I really feel like a large part of it in learning these systems that best support him is hearing from experts. So if you're the parent of a child who has ADHD or you have ADHD yourself, I'd really love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your perspectives on things. I'd love to hear what you're doing and what you aren't doing. And I'd just love to hear all of that and just create this community around parents who have children with ADHD or parents who have ADHD themselves and what you're doing to manage all of that. Because honestly, when I found out my son had ADHD, of course, I got all the books, I started reading about it, and side note, I am in psychology classes myself. I'm finishing my degree in psychology, so I have that side of resources for it. So I have, of course, the professional side, but I noticed that when I Googled it when I searched it on YouTube, a lot of like really great psychologists came up and and fantastic, of course we want to hear from them, but I thought we were really missing the perspective of other parents, right? Like, I was like, that's great, I love this clinical explanation of what's ADHD. Well, what are other parents doing? Like, how are you managing? Do you also feel tired all the time? Because I feel tired all the time when it comes to this stuff sometimes. And I just really wanted to bring this just like mama parenting perspective to it and just really start these conversations and just build a community where we're all kind of going through something similar. And so if that's you, I'd really love to hear from you. Please drop me a comment below. I want to hear your story. I want to hear all about you. And if you feel like you're really struggling to get your child who has ADHD to listen, you're gonna want to watch this video because I break down what I do to get my son to listen to me when he's just like, I get full like resistance, like, no, you can't make me. This is exactly what I do. So watch that one next, and I can't wait to hear from you.